Okay, so here are the functions that we've talked about so far. Okay, we've taken a look at sum, product, and average, max, min, median, mode, and then we have three different options for counting. Count, count A, count blank. Okay. All of these functions so far have followed basically the same pattern as far as how they're put together. Equals, name of function, and then inside parentheses, for the most part, we have been giving it a range of cells. We looked at other options, but we gave it a range of cells. Okay. Here's our next function. It is a counting function. Okay, so this is really the fourth type of count that I want to look at. And it's a little different. If I switch over to our spreadsheet for a second, sorry. Okay. If I asked you before, I think we asked how many products do we sell in the cafeteria, right? And maybe we use the count function. I'll just put it in here for the heck of it. Count or count A, depending on what you did there. Right, so equals, we did equals count A, A2 to A9, and we counted how many products we sell in the cafeteria, and we have a total of 8. Great. Okay. Here's my next question. Let's say, I don't know, how many products in the cafeteria generated more than $2,000 in revenue? How many products in the cafeteria generated more than $2,000 of revenue this week? As you can tell, this is not a normal counting question. This is counting, but I only want to count, if I look at the revenues for a second, I only want to count revenues that are more than 2,000. So if I do it just by I, this is 1, this is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I did not count mozzarella sticks and salad because they did not generate more than $2,000 of revenue. So this next type of counting, I want to be able to count things that meet a condition or a criteria. Only count products whose revenue is more than 2,000. Maybe another question I would ask could be, how many students in the class are female? That's different than how many students are in the class, period. Now I want to know how many students in the class are female. How many students in the class have a shoe size greater than 9? How many students in the class are shorter than 5'3"? So whatever we're going to count on, I want to count based on a condition. Okay, so let's take a look. This next function I want to look at is called COUNTIF. COUNTIF, all one word. But again, it is used to count the number of cells in a range that meet a criteria. Okay. The name of the function is COUNTIF, all one word. Okay. Now, this is going to be a little bit of a change from what we've been doing so far. Up until this point, we've always had equals name of function, open parentheses, and 9 times out of 10, we've put a cell range in there, close parentheses, and we were done. This time, if you look, COUNTIF needs 2 arguments. This needs 2 pieces of data in order for this to work. So this is the first function that we're going to take a look at that requires more than 1 argument, more than 1 piece of data. Okay. I'll describe it and then I'll show you some examples. The first argument I'm going to call, or Sheets calls, the cell range. What range of cells would you like me to look at? Comma, Then we're going to tell it what criteria should I look for in these cell ranges. Okay. So if I were to read this sentence, if I read this function or formula like a sentence, I would say, please count me cells in this range that meet this criteria. Okay. Please count the cells, any cell in this range that meets this criteria. And what can the criteria be? We can do a couple of different things. So what if you're looking for a very specific value? Okay, so in this case, please count in A1 to A5. Look at all the cells in A1 to A5 and only count me the cells who are equal to 500. If you just name the number, it'll try to match it exactly. So please count any cell in this range of cells between A1 and A5 and only count the cells in that range that are equal to 500. We could do this, maybe. Please look at all the cells. Please only count cells in A1 to A5 who match the value in D2. So it's going to go into cell D2, and whatever happens to be stored there, it's going to try to look for that value in this range. Okay, so look, please count all the cells in this range that meet this criteria. Here is where things start to get a little interesting. We could have some larger statements that go in here. So the first two, the examples that I gave you there, only were matching. So find me all the cells in A1 to A5 that equal 500 or that are equal to D2, the value in D2. Well, the question I just asked you, how many products in the cafeteria generated more than $2,000 in revenue? Here we want to almost do a comparison. I want to see things like greater than, less than, things like that. Okay, so this third example here is please count all the cells in this range that are greater than 500. Right, so we can kind of have this bit of a comparison statement going on in here. Okay, please note that if you're going to do this type of a statement, greater than 500, less than 500, whatever, in this particular function, that statement has to be put inside quotes. Okay, it's an open quote and a closed quote. Okay, if you try to do it without the quotes, I believe Sheets is going to yell at you. If you want to match text, you can also put the text you're trying to match in quotes as well. So please count any cell in this range that equals male. Okay, so if we had male and female maybe stored in our spreadsheet, I would want to look for all of the males spelled out, or all the females, however you indicated male, female, or whatever it might be. Okay, so these are some of the basic structure to the COUNTIF function. This is the first function we've looked at that takes 2 arguments. Okay, we're going to see more, and spoiler alert, we're going to see some other functions that take more than 2 arguments, but we'll work up to that. Okay, equals COUNTIF. The name of the function is COUNTIF, all one word. First argument is the cell range, comma, the criteria is the second argument. One thing to note, they always have to come in that order. It is always cell range, comma, the criteria. You cannot reverse them. Sheets will get upset with you. We won't know how to deal with it. So it's expecting to find a cell range first, comma, the criteria. Okay? Before we can continue and play around with that question that we asked you, I need to talk about how do we write with the comparison operator. So this is how to write the statement greater than 500. What are the other comparison operators we can look at? And here they are. You are used to doing this in math. So maybe you've seen math equations using some of these symbols here, things like greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, not equal to, those types of things. Unfortunately, on your keyboard, we do not have a greater than or equal to symbol on your keyboard that we can just type. We don't have a not equals sign on your keyboard. So the way we're going to write these operators in Excel is in the column on the right. Greater than and less than are the exact same thing. Greater than or equal to is really going to be 2 characters, greater than, equal to, right next to each other. Less than or equal to, this is the one that always throws people for a loop, not equal to. The not equal to operator you're used to seeing in your math class is now going to look like this in Sheets and Excel. It's greater than, less than, right, put next to each other. It looks like a diamond. Okay, this symbol means not equal to. Okay, and equal is the same as it was before. Okay, so please make a note of those. All right, so that's going to be a little different than what you're used to doing. Just we'll have to have multiple characters to do these operators here. Okay. So if we flip back to your spreadsheet for a second, let's see how this would work. Okay, so I'm just going to come down here and play for a second. The name of the function we're talking about is COUNTIF. COUNTIF. The first argument here is what range of cells do we want to look at? Right. So in this case, I wanted to know how many products in the cafeteria generated more than $2,000 of revenue. Okay, so I guess the first question is, where are the revenues on this spreadsheet? And the revenues happen to be here in column I. So I want to look at from column I2 to I9. Please look in this range, comma, and now what are we looking for? I want to only count values in this range that are greater than 2,000. So if I'm going to do that, open quote, greater than 2,000. Close quote, close parentheses. Anytime you open a quote, you need to make sure you close a quote. Anytime you open a parentheses, you need to make sure you close a parentheses. They always come in pairs. Okay, so there's your formula. Equals COUNTIF I2 to I9, comma, greater than 2,000. Please look at this range of cells and only count me values in there that are greater than 2,000. And I think we identified this before. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We should get an answer of 6. And we do. Okay, so there's COUNTIF. Count values in a range of cells that meet a criteria. Okay. Maybe just to play with one more, I want to know how many products in the cafeteria sold less than 100 units on Tuesday. How many products in the cafeteria sold less than 100 units on Tuesday? If I start saying, or you look at questions, then they talk about how many how many, and there's always another but after it, how many that are X. If there's ever like a further narrowing of what the condition is to count, that's probably COUNTIF, not just a normal count. Okay, so I guess my first question is, where are all the Tuesday sales totals? They're here in column D. So look at these sales totals, comma, and I want to know how many sold 100 or less. 100 or less, less than or equal to 100. Okay. Before I hit enter here, how many sold less than or equal to 100? One. No. There's 1, 2. Right, so I should have 2 products here that sold less than or equal to 100. And there it is. Okay. So there are a couple of questions there about COUNTIF. Okay. I want to count items in a range that meet a criteria. Equals COUNTIF, range of cells, where should I look for the values, comma, and what is the condition that would cause me to count them?